Professor Horror. Scary Stories.
I was about 4 or 5 years old and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a two-bedroom apartment. I had my own room, but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our two bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor, and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer and my mom had a window open in her room, which was directly behind the bed, above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and I remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the doorframe of my mom's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3 or 4 seconds it took for her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up at the doorframe and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the first floor and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed and we were able to start screaming for help and someone called 911. The police came, but they didn't see any signs of forced entry, only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe that the man must have exited that way. The strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night with the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later, she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet, and she found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. This story happened when I was just 12 years old. I had just moved back to my dad's house when I was 10, and I didn't really know anyone in the area, except for the family that my dad was friends with. It was a single mom with 3 kids, and luckily there was a girl a couple years older than me. She was 12 the time I met her, and we got to know each other a little bit over the few years I was there. We weren't too close, but we ended up having the same friends. One night, my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work. This is where it gets terrifying and sad. Her mother has been helping this one lady through her work, and she got to know her fairly well. She found out that her sister was in a mental institution and was recently let out. The night that Rob was hanging out with my friend, they got a knock at the door. My friend thought it was just her mom, because she knocks a certain way when she usually comes in, and she just answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there, so he took off through the window to his house down the road. He never thought twice about it. Well, it wasn't her mom. It was the sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to her sister where her family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where I don't really know the details, and I'm honestly glad that I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbor's house to call the police. That lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas, decapitated her, and left her body in a bathtub. She hit her head. They had to look through the presents, and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. About 5 years ago, my mom started dating a guy she met on a dating site. That part's fine. I had recently started dating the woman who would later become my wife, and we had met online. I'll just refer to her as my wife for this story. Anyways, my wife and I never really liked this guy. We didn't think he was mean or anything like that, just a little creepy. He was quiet, but he kept his eyes closed a lot and occasionally said odd things like offering my wife a chocolate and then popping one in his mouth, closing his eyes and moaning as he let it melt in his mouth. One time, my wife and I were visiting my mom, but she got called into work, so we waited at her house. Her boyfriend was over, but he spent the entire several hours just hanging out in her bedroom with the door closed. Just before Christmas, my mom and this guy started having some difficulties. My wife and I were visiting her for the holidays, and she dropped all of her problems on us, and we listened carefully and told her our opinions and suggested that she would be better if she were not with him. She already had made her mind up though, and she decided to break up with him on Christmas Eve. We spent the night at my mom's and got up early on Christmas morning to visit my dad at his house. We didn't plan to spend the night at my dad's, but we got snowed in, which was actually a nice Christmas surprise. The next day, we left as soon as we could get through the snow, and my wife suggested that we stop by my mom's house on the way so that we could see if she was okay. My wife just had a really bad feeling about my mom's now ex-boyfriend. My mom's car was in the driveway, but that doesn't mean much because she lives close enough to work that she often walks, and it hadn't snowed in her town. She also never locks her door, which drives me crazy, so we let ourselves in. That's when we see blood oozing out of the refrigerator's water dispenser. It had filled up the spill container and was leaking onto the floor and had made a puddle. My wife screamed and I freaked out. I fully expected to see my mom's head in the freezer. I nervously opened the freezer to find a bag of frozen cherries that had been opened, crammed into the freezer so that it fell onto the ice dispenser and melted. It was such a relief. I really thought that my mom's ex-boyfriend had murdered her. I was sitting in my room after getting out of work on the second floor. My little brother's downstairs watching TV and the dog is in the hallway outside my door sleeping. All of a sudden, the dog starts making all kinds of racket, jumping around, barking, clacking nails, howling. I go to get up to see what's going on and I hear, "Oh, that's a good girl," in a male voice. It didn't sound like my little brother, so I go, "Oh, you're home early," thinking it was my dad's friend slash our roommate as I open the door. As soon as I'm out there, I see there's no one at all but the dog wagging her tail staring at the empty end of the hallway. My little brother comes upstairs to yell at me for getting his dog all riled up, and he heard the same voice thinking it was me or our roommate. We did a once-over of the house with my butterfly knife and his BB gun, and there was nobody there. It still gives me the spooks to this day.